Good morning and welcome to Saturday's Passion of Dr. Lamba's Awakening Call. When we talk of women in Hinduism, it's not the religion we are talking about. It's a culture created in Hinduism and that encompasses all religions, all sects that reside or have resided in India. Be Muslims, be Sikhs, Christians, Jews. As in the Parsis who maintained their identity, the rest all have imbibed this cultural aspect. And when I started this question, the first comment that was posted was, were Hindu women always exploited? As a matter of fact, that question is normal, and Mr. Singh Jaspal, who raised this question, is justified. India has witnessed gender inequality, and it is even now witnessing the same, rather, the gender inequality is increasing. But women, were they always exploited like that? As asked by Mr. Singh Jaspal, no, they were not. As a matter of fact, they were on a very high pedestal. But when I see the people today, even a judge of the Supreme Court, Rohinton Nariman, the other day, misquoted Rig Veda and talked about the anti-women sentiment. Hindu texts, and again, let me tell you, when I'm talking of the text, or Hindu, the word Hindu does not mean Hindu religion, it's culture, culture pervading the whole country. So the religious texts, I'll call it, in India, present diverse and conflicting views on the position of women. And they range from feminine leadership as the highest goddess to limiting gender roles. The Devi Sukta hymns of Rig Veda, which is a scripture, declares that feminine energy is the essence of the universe, the one that creates all matters, and consciousness, the eternal, the infinite, the metaphysical, the empirical reality of soul, of everything. And women is celebrated as the most powerful and empowering force in many Hindu scriptures, Upanishads, Shastras, Puranas, particularly in Devi Upanishad, Devi Mahamaya, Devi Bhagavata Purana. So ancient and medieval texts present a diverse picture, and that picture is of duties and the rights of women in Hinduism. The text recognize 8 kinds of marriage, of course, ranging from the father marrying, which is called Brahma marriage, onwards to elopement and Gandharv marriage, and that's like that. As a matter of fact, the concept of dowry, the concept of sati, they were not there. And throughout the history, Hindu society has seen many women rulers. Rudrama Devi, the religious figures and the saints as Andal, philosophers as Maitri, and the female practitioners of Vedic Hindu rituals. They were the people who were performing even the rituals. And normally, ritual performance has been the close preserve of the males. Hinduism has the strongest presence of the divine feminine among the world religions. You start with any religion, and nowhere you would find the divine feminine quality as in Hindu culture. The goddess is viewed as central Shakti, and is there in Shiva Hindu traditions. Matriarchal theology is quite prevalent in Sanskritic traditions. And village Hinduism relating to the worship of Shakti, and there are numerous Hindu communities which are matriarchal. Look at the Vedic scripture. As I said, the 10th chapter of Rig Veda asserts that the feminine to be the supreme principle behind all cosmos. And that is called Devi Sukta. I'm the queen, the gatherer up of the treasures, most thoughtful, first of those who merit to worship. The gods have established me. And that goes on. So imagine it right from the Rig Veda. And Rig Veda, right from chapter 10, the 5 verses, hymns accredited to women scholars who are called Brahmanis. So these verses, these hymns were composed by women. And these women who composed them were Gargi, Alya, Maitri, Lopamudra, Gosha, Swaha, Hemavati Uma, Gautami, Hemleka. And at the same time, can you believe in the Rig Veda you find contradictory views? Indra himself said, minds of women brook no discipline, and with women there can be no lasting friendship. That was basically because of the psychology, because the women might be misled, but their capability, their motivation is not. And then, Upanishads, look at Upanishads. Now, what I quoted from Indra is not from Veda, is from Upanishad. But Devi Sukta ideas of Rig Veda are further developed into Satta Upanishad, where Devi asserts that she is Brahma and arises from Prakriti and Parish. Parish is the consciousness, not me. And what is there? The philosophy, whether we find in Bhairutya Upanishad, Tirupati Upanishad, or as I said earlier, in Devi Sukta, is the same. As a matter of fact, the Brihadaranyaka Upanishad, composed 800 years before Christ, includes a lesson for his guest, and the student is taught that as a husband, he should cook rice for women. Can you believe it? 800 years before Christ, 8th century before Christ, the male is being taught how to cook rice for the women, and then they together eat the food. And how? It is a ceremony sort of a thing. If they want to be a son, have a son or a daughter. And if a man wishes that a learned daughter should be born to him and she should live him into a full age, then after having boiled rice with sesame and butter, they should both eat together. But if he wants to have a son who should live with him, then he has to have boiled rice with grain and butter. And it's there in Brihadaranyaka Upanishad. But imagine the man cooking for the women. Then women are mentioned as participants in the philosophical debates, as I mentioned about Gargi, Maitri. And a word used is a charani. Now, charani can be a teacher's wife, but they can also be treated as a guru. The 8th century poet Bhavabhuti describes in his plays, Uttarama Charitra, how the character Atriya traveled to South India, where he studied the Vedas and the philosophy. In Madhva's Shankaracharya, Shankara debates with the women philosopher Bharti. Then comes epic, Mahabharata and Ramayana. In Mahabharata, legendary epic, the social beliefs and cultures of India. The first book, Dushyanta and Shakuntala. They are married for love in Gandharv's time. But the role of women is mixed. In Mahabharata, Draupadi is married to 5 husbands, but she is insulted and that triggers a war. Ramayana, composed in the second half of millennium, Sita is respected, honored, and seen as inseparable beloved. And when so much so that when she goes into exile and Ashwamedha Yajna is to be performed, it's not complete till the golden statue of Sita is placed along with Rama because no ceremony could be complete without women. In Mahabharata, I was amazed to see Anushashan Parv, and that has various chapters devoted to duties and the rights of women. It gives a mixed picture. In chapter 11, for example, the goddess of wealth and prosperity asserts that she lives in those women who are truthful, sincere, modest, devoted to the family, health conscious, great qualities. So you can't say that they were exploited. Even if I look at the others, for example, in Udyog Parva of Mahabharata, the duties of women are again recited. And they are set in the shape of a conversation between Lord Shiva and his wife, Uma. Then, apart from Vedas and others, if you look at the Smritis, and the scholars have doubted the dates of Smritis, but you cannot deny that except for Manu Smriti, no other Smriti criticizes or degrades women. As a matter of fact, even in Arthashastra, I mean, can you believe it? Chanakya in his Arthashastra, chapter 1, at verse 21, describes women that they should receive military education. They should be fighters as well. And they should protect the king. The text also mentions the female artisans, medicants, and ascetics. So women have always been there. But of course, Manusmriti says that women as they should obey her fathers, should be in the protection of the father, then on the husband, and then on the son. So that is the sole example. But then Manusmriti itself says women must be honored and adored. Where women are revered, that the gods rejoice and they resign. Shastra is one thing, is one of the most important shastras, socio-economic, where it says very clearly that a woman has no right to divorce against the will of her husband. But then again, the husband has no right to divorce the wife against her will. So both are at par. So the people who say that women have been exploited in the India are giving a wrong version. Then look at the economic power. Manusmriti provides that a woman with property rights to six types of property. What she receives at marriage, the gifts that she's taken away, and all the gifts, and inheritance from the deceased relatives. Can you believe it? Islam gives inheritance, but then the percentage of the money given in Islam is reduced. The daughters don't get the same share as the sons get. But here in Manu Samriti, they say both should get the same share. Nobody can deny that Manu Samriti is a complex document, but it's important. And then it shows the rights and the perspective of women. Puranas I've already told you. So now let's come to the reality, the practice. The practice was that the women were really, really admired and revered. But then started the invasions, Kushans, Huns, and then Muslims. And when these foreigners came, women, they had an idea that women could be degraded, they could be used for two purposes. One as prostitutes, the second as commodities to be sold in the slave market, and for breeding. Don't forget it. At that time, the population of the world was not that much. And the gangs of the robbers, predators, invaders which came, they wanted to increase their population. No, they had come by themselves. So they had the sexual urges to satisfy, and they wanted to increase their population. So why not kidnap the girls and rape them and marry them? Now then the withdrawal started. To protect women, they came up with a concept of Johor, a dignified way of death. Sati, when you are a widow, Johor, when you are going to be defeated, you know that the invaders are going to kidnap you. So those practices started. Then the practice of dowry came into being because the factor changed. Then the people wanted to offload women because the moment she is married, then she's the responsibility of the husband. So you started giving bride money. In some societies, the other way around, you give the money to the girl's parents. So, as a matter of fact, if you look at the book Arya, The Invasion of India by Alexander the Great, the third century, you would find that they were not giving dowries or taking dowries. And women were brought forward by the parents and they would select swimmer sort of a thing. And when Al-Daruni visited India, 1200 years after Alexander, he was amazed. He spent 16 years in India. And he said that this sort of a power given to women to select a husband is nowhere in the world. He had traveled all over the world. Then widows were traditionally supposed to be ascetic, but there were no restrictions there than remarriage. And only a small women, of course, remarried, but they were permitted. On the whole, the system was very conducive to their life. The sati, again, as I told you, came to protect the women from the invaders. The biggest problem came, and now let me give you a very interesting incident that the first sati in the history of the Hindu civilization was in Kashmir, Madhyati. But the Vedic tradition, if you see, bans it. Madhvacharya, a 13th century ascetic, argues that sati should be banned. This was much before Raja Ram Mohan Rai came. But they were the reasons for that. And then education. Women were given the same sort of education as a male was. Atharvaved says that the young Kanya, young girl, must graduate from Brahmacharya ashram to go to Grasta ashram. So she had to undergo an education. And there was no difference. She was studying, as I said earlier, even the martial arts. And the dress, you would see, the medieval and the ancient dress traditions are very clear. Women were more open. They were dressed. In the Arthashastra, for example, is mentioned that the clothes should be plant based, muslin based, wool based, partially dyed and knitted or woven. And if you look at it, there was no covering. Faces were not covered. Headdress was there, a dupatta, and that was as a mark of respect to the others. When you're wearing a dupatta, it's a sign of modesty, but not otherwise. And then, economic status was there. The costume of ancient women was formed of two separate sheets of cloth. The wrapping on the lower part of the body and wrapping on the upper part of the body. Again, when the parda came and the veil came was later on. If you look at the marriages conducted earlier, women was never veiled. And when the people tell me that Islam gave more importance, no, it did not. As a matter of fact, in Islam, women is at a much inferior status than it was in any other religion. And as a matter of fact, women's greatest achievement in Hinduism was in the field of art, whether it was dance, drama, or music. The Hindu religion encounters that, and there's a goddess for that, Saraswati, the deity for the arts, music, poetry, speech, culture. And according to Baumer, the result of Sanskrit theatre has its origin in the Vedas, and it's mentioned in chapter 6 that the cosmic man Purush cannot achieve salvation until he is accompanied by women who are active in dance, music, and artistic performance. Imagine the first century BC, the Tharya Samhita mentions that the plastic arts are to be promoted. And Hindu women have their statues and the dance pose in Bali, Indonesia. So music and dance are intertwined in Hindu traditions, and a woman who is suppressed cannot be in these areas. Can you believe it? When the film industry started being, I remember, Geeta Bali, who was belonging to a Sikh family, Dr. Kartaj. And when she became an actress, her family severed our relationship with her. And here it was in the millenniums before Christ. Women were encouraged to be dancers, actresses, and so on. And Devdasi tradition, which is later degenerated into a practical prostitution, was basically a practice in art, classical vocal music, dance. And this was very prevalent, especially in the matrilineal Hindu tradition. So Devdasi was not bad. As a matter of fact, they were trained in the arts of music, theatre, and dance, and they would revolve around the Hindu circle. Later on, of course, they degenerated, undeniably. But beginning was absolutely, and then in poetry, look at the 19th century Andal became a well-known Bhakti movement poetess. Have you seen this sort of a women empowerment anywhere else in any other civilization? No. So, in the historical context, women were great. But as the degradation started with the invasions, and then came the British period, and then again the revival of started. So it was a sort of coming down, a fall from the exalted position, and then there was lowest was at the Mughal period, and when the British came, it started going up. So it was a sort of a U-shaped turn. Hindu women are the women in Hinduism. Again, I'm not talking of the religion, but I'm talking of the culture. Shows women and treats women as human beings, as people who are equal, if not better than men for people, the ladies, who represent the God. And even, the tradition is that the young girls are worshipped, Kanjak. The young worship at various ceremonies, they are worshipped. And they are never treated like they did. And the domestic violence was abhorred. So Hindu civilization basically has exalted women, but then the historical reasons and the social conditions were responsible for the change. You cannot blame one thing. It's a historical process. Everything that goes up ultimately comes down and then again goes up. And that is the way the Hindu society has treated women, exalted to downgrading slowly and then accepting the fact that they are equal, if not better than them. Thank you.